WebEx, can you hear us? You can give a thumbs up if you do. Or maybe Alder Peckham, could you speak?
Yep.
Oh, I hear you.
Yeah, could you just
Yes,
ask,
very good.
maybe ask Lisa to speak to it just to double check?
Yeah, we're back to that situation though where the audio coming from the chamber is super, super loud. So the WebEx participants can hear each other normal, but the microphones in the chamber are really, really amplified.
Well, that's fun.
Okay, hang on.
All right, we're adjusting some things, I think.
Thank you.
Is it, why don't you talk to her right now and see if she's a little better?
Who?
Mayor, can you just talk?
Oh, yes, I am just testing out the microphones for everyone. Is
You said that's better.
Lisa, is that better? Or Alder?
That's a lot better.
Now, 6:33, and I'm calling to order the Common Council of the City of Wausau meeting. It is Tuesday, April 28th, 2020. And the first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance, so we can all stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first order of business is our roll call. Please sign in. Oh, I guess we're going to do it the way we're doing it now, which is Leslie.
Peckham,
Yes, aye.
Martins, Martins,
Here.
Killian,
Present.
Neal,
Here.
Wadinsky,
Here.
McElhaney. Here. Rasmussen,
She said it, but it's on mute.
Watson. Here. Herbst. Here. Larson,
Here.
Ryan.
Here. All right, we have everyone. Moving on, we have the pre-registered citizens for matters appearing on the agenda and other public comment. Do we have anyone registered that would like to speak? All right, I guess we are moving on to our consent agenda. We have file number 200301, approving the minutes of our previous meeting on March 24th, 2020. I would entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
I would move to accept the minutes
Oh.
by amendment.
I guess we're going to accept both the minutes. Since it's our consent agenda, I would take a motion to accept the entire consent agenda, and that includes the resolution approving parking permit fee abatement program during Safer at Home. I have a motion by McElhaney. Do I have a second? I have a second by Herbst. Is there any discussion? Yes. Alder Ryan.
Since I wasn't elected when the minutes were for March 24th, that's in the consent agenda, I move that we pull those out from the consent agenda.
Do I need a second? Is this a live motion that I need a second for, or can we just pull? All right,
You could just pull.
all right, we can pull that. And then we're just then voting on the resolution approving parking fee abatement program. Is there any discussion on this? Alder Peckham.
I will hold off. I have an amendment to the minutes for the meeting of the 14th, but I see that that's down in our action area, so I would request to speak.
Okay, we can wait on your comments then. Is there any, I can't tell Alder Rasmussen if you're motioning that you'd like to speak or if you're adjusting a camera.
I'm adjusting the volume.
Oh, okay. Are we, oh, yes, Alder Watson.
I just had a question about the fee abatement. Is it, was it discussed to have it tacked on, like, at the end instead of refunded automatically to people that applied, instead of, like, extending their parking permit by the time that it's shut down?
Yes, we have our finance director who can answer that question.
We did talk about that internally. You know, a lot of our parkers are transient in nature, and I'm not sure that they would be interested in tacking it on. And so we thought it would be cleaner to just use one method and, you know, not try to keep track of multiple
Excuse me, we should
methods.
be voting on the consent, the minutes first before we go to this item.
We pulled that. This is in the consent agenda, right?
But it was pulled.
The minutes were pulled to vote on separately.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. My mistake.
Nope,
Sorry.
that's okay. We're all in this together. Are there any other questions on this? Are we prepared to vote? Okay, looks like we're ready to vote.
Okay, so I will be sharing my screen so that you can see what the motion is. So this is the motion that we will be voting on. Okay, when I call your name, please indicate yes or no. Peckham,
Yes.
Martins, Martins, Mr. Martins,
Aye. Aye.
Killian,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Wadinsky,
Aye.
McElhaney, Rasmussen,
Aye.
Watson, Herbst, Larson,
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you very much. Now we'll go back to the meeting minutes from March 24th, 2020 that we had pulled, and we'll vote separately. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll move to accept the minutes.
A motion by Rasmussen and a second by McElhaney. Any discussion? Yes, Alder Ryan.
Since I was not part of the city council, I will be abstaining from the vote. Thank you.
Abstention noted. Is there any other discussion? All right, I think we're prepared to vote.
Peckham,
Yes.
Martins,
Aye.
Killian,
Yes.
Neal,
Aye.
Wadinsky,
Aye.
McElhaney, Rasmussen,
Aye.
Watson, Herbst, Larson.
Aye.
Motion passes 10 yes and 1 abstention.
All right, thank you. Moving on, we have file number 200403, and that's confirmation of the mayor's appointments to boards, commissions, and committees as indicated. I think you all have had a chance to review those committees. I just wanted to let you know a little bit. I've been getting some questions about how we came to these appointments to these commissions. So I thought I'd just let you in on how I did this. I took all of your requests and I put them into a document, and I looked at how many people we had requesting to be part of a committee, and then how many slots we had to fill. And now some of this was very easy. The same number of people requested to be a part of a committee that we had. Others were a little bit more difficult, especially to some of those non-standing committees where we have a random onesie, twosie kind of a situation. So we had to decide. I didn't decide this by myself. I had a couple hours long conversation with Council President McElhaney, and we hashed through this together just to put anybody's hearts at ease. There was nobody else involved, nobody from outside the council, no staff. It was just Council President Becky McElhaney and me. And I guess I also wanted to let you know that this isn't it for the appointments. There are a couple that are coming up later in a few months. And I've also drafted drafted a charter for a new task force that will focus on safe elections. And then I'm also looking at creating new committees, including a rules review committee, so we can continue on the discussion of our council rules. And then also a CIP committee, so that we can rank our CIP projects and come to some good process there, so we can recommend the projects we want to fund. So if there are any questions, or do I have a motion to accept these appointments? I would take that.
I would move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Neal, second by Rasmussen. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Okay, I guess we are prepared to vote on this.
Peckham,
Aye.
Martins,
Aye.
Killian,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Wadinsky,
Aye.
McElhaney. Rasmussen,
Aye.
Watson. Herbst. Larson,
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you very much, and I think you can have an expectation of your committee meetings starting at some point here, working on essential business for the city, so thank you. Moving on to file number 200401. That would be the minutes of our previous meeting from April 14th, 2020. Do I have a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved. Neal.
I have a motion by Neal, a second by Herbst. Any discussion here? Mr. Alder Peckham.
Yes, thank you, and I will lower my hand. Boy. On page 2 of those minutes, which is on page 17 of our packet, I would compliment our staff for an excellent job of recording a complex conversation and discussion, but there's one sentence that standing alone doesn't do justice to the intended meaning. And it is like the 4th line from the bottom of the page. It's about the Plaza Hotel development, and it's paraphrasing Chris Schock. And the sentence reads, "It is an expensive renovation that will not generate a significant amount of increment or new property value." And what was really meant there could be fixed by inserting 2 words. And it would change that to, "It is an expensive renovation that by itself will not generate a significant amount of increment or new property value." And I did check with Mr. Schock this afternoon, and he's in agreement that that would make that more clear, because that remark was strictly about the hotel property and not about the other developments that are going to take place on property that is now part of the hotel.
Can I have that in the form of a motion?
I would move to amend that sentence to read, "It is an expensive renovation that by itself will not generate a significant amount of increment or new property value."
All right, do I have a second?
Second by Neal.
A second by Neal. Is there any discussion on this, this motion? I think we're prepared to vote. So we're voting on the amendment to the minutes first. Or-
Ryan.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Herbst. Watson. Rasmussen.
Aye.
Peckham.
Aye.
Martins.
Aye.
Killian.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Wadinsky.
Aye.
McElhaney. Motion passes 11-0.
All right, the amendment is approved. Are we prepared to vote on the minutes as amended? Any further discussion? All right, I think we're prepared to vote. For anyone paying attention at home, it's taking us a second because we're typing up the votes for everyone to see on their WebEx, so everyone's clear.
Rasmussen,
Aye.
Watson. Aye. Herbst,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Peckham,
Aye.
Martins,
Aye.
Killian,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Wadinsky,
Aye.
McElhaney. Aye. Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you. All right, moving on. File number 191109. It's a resolution approving the 2020 budget modification for the Great Lakes Cheese Facility demolition. I would entertain, or what is the wish of this body?
I'd move to approve.
Motion by Peckham. Second by Herbst. Is there any discussion? Yes, Alder Ryan.
I'm aware that there's a potential of some contamination as you get to the bottom towards the land for the Great Lakes Cheese Facility demolition. And I know in past years, Tammy Strouts was aware of and the certified training that's required for contamination issues for contractors. And so are you having some type of documentation that's certifying that this contractor and his staff are certified in this contamination area?
Do I have, oh. Oh, sure. We'll have our Public Works Director here.
Short answer is yes. So anything related, North Star Testing did all the testing, and Mavo was doing all the abatement that's required on the site. The environmental, as far as the soils and stuff, that there weren't any environmental concerns related to the soils.
Thank you, Eric.
Alder Killian, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I was just wondering, is there, in terms of a time frame, some sense of urgency or time sensitivity on this matter? And if so, I'd kind of like to hear that planned chronology and time frame. And if there is not, I guess things have changed rather dramatically the last few months, just in terms of the state of affairs, not only in Wausau and Wisconsin, but around the country. Given those changes and the fact that we're essentially under a state of emergency in certain ways, is there a reason or rationale for why this has to move forward along with its associated costs?
Thank you. I'd like to recognize Alder Rasmussen, who maybe is going to offer a response to the question. Alder Rasmussen.
It's maybe a supplemental question to Mr. Killian's. I was under the assumption that we had previously approved development projects in that area that are waiting to start, and there's a plan study going on to figure out how they all fit on the site. So that site was one of them, but between Karma Brewing, a housing project, and Founder's Restaurant, I thought that site was needed to be cleared sooner than later. Is that still true?
I do believe we have Mr. Schock on the line. Are you prepared to?
Yeah, I can. So yes, that's correct. I think things are changing with some of the proposals, but we are finalizing the layout of the area, and we are aware that the housing project would start But, it's still on schedule to start later this year. The committee and council would need to approve kind of the final layout plan and the construction of, kind of construction timing for the road and other improvements in the area. So those steps are, still need to be taken, but the demolition of the building is an important first step to any other reviews or steps in the future.
Alder Rasmussen, your hand is still up. Do you have a follow-up?
Nope, but I'm gonna lower it right now.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Any other discussion? Oh, Alder Killian.
Thank you. Yes, I think we've seen huge fluctuations in the market, and with some stating that we're at perhaps an 80% chance of a recession in the near future, and perhaps that's optimistic. Given that, just a general comment, I feel that it may be wise to revisit some of these plans and expenditures, because the change in events that we have experienced is not modest at all, and it may warrant, I think, putting some of these on the back burner or pausing the button along with the associated expenses, and that's why I'll be voting against this. Thank you.
Alder Peckham.
Yes, thank you. I just think that the wheels of the city need to continue to turn. And I think that if we put this thing on ice, we would be essentially contributing to the problem of the economic woes of the area, because we would be denying employment to the people who need it. So I would say let's get this done while we can.
Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. The only thing I would have to add is that my understanding was that we were actually already underway with some of this demolition, and then the contractor who was hired passed away and wasn't able to complete it. That said, with that process started, it makes sense to finish it. That site, even if any of the previously approved projects aren't ready to move forward, it makes sense that we would have that site clean and ready to develop, so that when those projects become shovel ready, that the land is ready also. And obviously the cost of waiting on any of these projects really only goes up over time. So the fact that it's been started and the building has no useful value, I think getting it out of there makes sense. So I'm going to support it.
Mary Ann, do you have a comment?
Oh. Yes.
Yeah, I think one of the really driving forces was to have such a large building that the city is going to have to maintain while it's up. It costs us money every day. Security is an issue, and so the sooner we get the building down from a security and just a maintenance standpoint is better for the city to have a clean site.
Alder Larson, did you have a comment?
I agree. I don't think this is a time we should be moving forward with anything. I think we have no idea what this pandemic, how it's going to, the impact of businesses going out of business, people losing their jobs. We have no idea what kind of revenue what kind of impact it's going to have on the revenue of our city, and therefore I'm going to vote against it as well.
Is there any further discussion? Yes, Alder Ryan.
I had heard within the last week that Governor Evers is considering that the pandemic may cost the state $2 billion. So at this point, we just don't know where things are going with the pandemic. And I guess I do think we're going to be in a recession and potentially in depression. And so I really can't vote at this time for it. Thank you.
Alder McElhaney. Hi, Eric.
I haven't talked to you for a while, so. Do you have the idea of how much it costs the city? I think that's probably a good thing to get out there, how much it costs the city for security and for upkeep. we are responsible for that building. And the other thing I'd like to point out is that how that building looks with all the new development down there, and how we have some people, I totally understand everyone's worry about the pandemic. It's everyone's worry, My income went down drastically. I get it as much as anyone, but we also have to look at, it's not either this or nothing, because we have some other people building close to this that they don't want, that we have to watch their investment as well. So I just like to know if you have any idea of how much it costs the city to maintain that without taking it down.
I don't. I mean, I don't have specific dollars, but I know that during the interim, when the last demo contractor passed away, and we were trying to figure out, how to terminate that contract and move forward, we were down there every day. I know PD was doing extra patrols down there, just to keep people out of there. We continually had to put up fence, so we're there every day, while that building is up. At this point, all of the utilities have been disconnected from the building. And then, of course, anything that deteriorates on the inside of the building and stuff as well.
Is asbestos a problem in that building?
Yeah, we have one section left where there is asbestos in the building.
And that's half torn down, correct? I mean,
It is being worked on right now.
Okay.
But all of the other asbestos and any other issues have been abated.
right.
Yep.
I just want to point out every little issue that could be with this building staying up in a
Correct.
half taken down area where we had asbestos and everything else. And
Right.
that we need to make sure, all the details are out there.
Right, and I would, from my professional opinion, recommend if we have a vacant building that we own and is there and is not going to be used, that we take it down. Yep.
Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I guess just as a follow-up, that building right now, we own it, it pays no tax. So it's generating no income for the city at all. And so that said, whatever it costs us to maintain it and keep it secure is too much money. So even if it costs us $100 a year, we're not making any money on that building to offset any cost. So it needs to go.
Alder Neal.
Thank you. Not to belittle anybody's concerns about possible coming recession, because it's a valid concerns. I harken back to 2008 when we went through a different sort of downturn and recession. And I just recall at that time, when I was in my past career, that a number of businesses took that as the time to step back and to not do anything, and they really suffered as a result, whereas others maintained an aggressive stance and moved forward and looked to the future. And they're the ones that really came out of it very, very well. It was a lesson learned in 2008, and I'm sure that a lot of people in business and developers and whatnot right now are looking toward the future and how they'll come out of this, and that's just the way it's going to be. We have to get through this, and so I do support getting a clean site that just gets us closer to getting people in there to start their projects.
Alder Killian.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to speak to a couple of points. I'll start with kind of Mr. Neal's comment there about the 2008 recession. And I think we have to realize that this is nothing like 2008. And what we're seeing in the economy is roughly due to two things, and it's going to get worse, at least for a time being. I think that would be supply chain disruption as well as demand destruction. So unlike 2008, there's really no amount of money printing and quantitative easing that's going to assist this, because fundamentally this is not an economic problem, this is a health problem, and that is a novel virus. Secondly, I think, and not just for this evening, but moving forward, if there are going to be cost-benefit analyses thrown out there, I think it would be appropriate to put those on paper. I'd like to see them quantitatively. So if the argument here is that it's going to cost more for security and staff and maintenance, then I'd like to see those numbers. And I guess, would suggest we table this until something quantitative can be put behind that argument, because right now I just don't have it. And secondly, in terms of aesthetics and how it looks, I think we're facing the type of reality where it's more about the steak than the sizzle, and I think we should put the aesthetic concerns aside and think about financial health and where we may need some of that money in the immediate future.
Alder
Thank
Killian,
you.
I would just like to clarify, did you make a motion to table?
I will make that motion.
Okay, so I think it is our tradition that we postpone to a date certain. Do you have a future meeting that you'd like to see this come back on and with the details?
Well, given I'd like to wait until we see how the fiscal situation solidifies, I would move to postpone it until at least June. At that point, we'll see if the order from the governor has been lifted or not. We may be able to extrapolate a bit better at that point.
All right, there's a motion to postpone this topic until our June council meeting. Do I have a second? I have a second by Alder Larson. Is any discussion on this motion? Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I guess my only opposition to tabling it is that the longer we hold the building, the more it costs. So if our staff is out there at all, I mean, on a building we own that generates no income, that essentially could, whether it costs money for utilities or security or whatever it is, that's representing a drag on the budget. And it's not gonna get better, and it's not gonna go away, because there's no repurposing of that structure. It's half dealt with, and so that can only represent financial pain for the city and for the taxpayers by waiting. So there's nothing to be gained by waiting. And why would we leave it there and continue to invest resources, whether it's staff time or money, into that building when it could be cleared out and that staff time could be used for something else? I mean, at any rate, it's got direct and indirect costs. And so in my mind, if it represents a drain on any budget, whether it's the general fund or a department budget, that's a negative for us. And we can't afford to spend unnecessary money either. So getting rid of the building now makes sense. And waiting just prolongs the expense. So I would not support a table on this item.
Alder Neal, I'm seeing that your hand is raised, but I'm not sure if you're ready.
Yes.
Okay.
I would just add to this that if we've got a semi-raised building, then there are issues about access to those that don't belong there and potential liabilities associated with that. I think a clean site is preferable to that.
Is there any discussion, further discussion? Yes, Alder Watson.
How many, incidences have happened at the building, incidents of trespass or anything like that?
I do see that the police chief is on the line. I don't know if he's prepared for that question.
Hi, yes, good evening. I'm not aware of any incidents at that location. I would have to go into our system and do some review of that site to see if there have been any incidents there.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Oh, yes.
A little bit to that. Yeah, when we didn't have anybody down there, we did have some theft from the outside, some of the salvage material and stuff that was stockpiled and tied down. So some of that did get stolen. And so I think that will continue as long as the building is up. I'd also like to point out that there is money budgeted, for work to be done. So this is just a budget mod to make up the difference. So, if we continued to work with the money that was there, we could probably bring it down to the slab, and then rather than taking all the concrete and stuff, we could just leave the slab and the hardscape there at this point too, and work with the budget that we have that's already been approved.
Okay, Alder Neal, I see your hand is up. Did you have another discussion, or is that erroneous? Okay, I'm going to call on Alder Killian.
Thank you. I think what Mr. Lindman said makes a lot of sense with the money that's already been budgeted. I think that there's a good rationale behind that, and without increasing it any further, I think I would agree with Mr. Lindman on that.
Is there any further discussion? All right, so the motion that you'll be voting on is to postpone this topic until our June council meeting. Just let us prepare for a second, we'll take that vote.
Peckham,
No.
Martins,
No.
Killian,
Yes.
Neal,
We didn't hear you.
Neal, Neal,
Thumbs down.
Wadinsky,
No.
McElhaney? No. Rasmussen?
No.
Watson? Herbst?
No.
Larson?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Neil says no. Did you get my vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, when the motion comes up on screen, my little button goes away and I don't know how to turn my mic back on, so.
Motion fails 3-8.
All right, so now we are back to the motion as presented. Oh, yes.
Okay, I'd like to propose an amendment.
All right.
That we would amend this motion currently on the floor to, let me see how to say this. I want to keep the previously budgeted amount for demolition and not do any budget amendment for any extra to complete this project, hopefully just to complete it to the concrete slab that way. Correct? Correct.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to,
Second.
oh, I have a second by Mr. Killian? Oh. Yes, all right, I have a couple people requesting to speak, but I will call it. What was that?
I was just waiting, did somebody second?
Yes, Mr. Killian seconded. All right, Alder Watson.
So I guess my understanding though of the resolution is it's just for budget modification, so if we vote against it, the monies you have to demolish the building are still there. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, so there wouldn't have to be an amendment? Wouldn't it just be?
We
it's already
could-
existing?
Go ahead, we could vote it down.
Yeah, I think where we came in once we switched contractors was the additional amount to remove all the hardscape. And so I'd have to sit down with the contractor and find out exactly what the budget that we have, what all would be removed and what we'd be able to do. And so if that's the budget that the council wishes us to work with, that's what we'll work with.
Alder Earl Larson.
Isn't it the case that, if we just demolish it down to the slab, whoever chooses to develop on it could choose to do with the slab what they want too, is that correct?
Yeah, if they want, I mean, they'd have to look at it and see if it's usable for them.
Yeah, usable or haul it away at their expense.
Yeah, whatever that agreement is.
Right,
Yep.
okay. I can go with that.
Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I guess just a point of clarification. I think Ms. Watson had this right, where if we're not interested in doing a budget modification to approve the rest of the money, there's no item to act on, because they already have funds in the 2020 budget to do what Becky was asking for. So we shouldn't have to act on the item at all if we're not interested in adding money. Is that correct? We would just withdraw the item entirely.
Yeah, I can withdraw that motion, and then we would still vote on it and vote no to not go ahead with the amendment, correct? Or I mean, the budget mod.
Well, you would vote down the increase,
Right,
yes?
right.
But the only thing I would add is that that then holds up the start dates on those future projects if they have financing either approved or waiting once things open up. If they need that site clean, like we had proposed it would be in the RFP, we may have to go back later and pay the rest of that money anyway.
Alder Neal.
Yes, I would think that I would lean towards, let's just table this, as was suggested earlier, mainly because we can have, the majority of the work done with available funds. If we vote this down right now officially, then in effect, are we saying in the future, well, don't ask for it again because it's already voted down by council? So better to table it and address it in the future when we can say, yeah, we do need that amendment now, but we went ahead with what we had, to get to a certain point in the project. So I would favor, if anything else, nothing else rather, going ahead and tabling this for further consideration, maybe at our next meeting or 2 meetings ahead. If not, vote it down right now because that would set some sort of precedent, perhaps.
Thank you. We're asking for clarification from our city attorney.
Wow, I got to stay awake. I noted that McElhaney made the amendment and Killian seconded it. So if you want to withdraw your amendment, is Mr. Killian willing to withdraw his second? Would be my first question.
Yeah, I am.
Okay. So we've
Okay.
withdrawn that amendment.
And then, I don't know if you want clarification from Mary Ann, but I had the same thought that Alder Watson did. And I can't tell from reading this necessarily. So you need, it's a carryover and a budget modification. So the one, you have fiscal impact 264, 500 up above, but we've got the 115, 5 and the 54, 5 make the 170 down here, but then there's another 54, 5 debt proceeds. So could you help explain whether we need to do something with this now, and then you can decide whether you want to table it, because tabling it then doesn't allow us to continue to demolish it to a certain point within our budgetary means at this point. So that's 2 really totally different actions.
Sure.
So I do think that a budget modification would be necessary because the funds exist for the 115,000, I think it is, yes, 115, 500. Those are available unspent in the original contract. So we had funding for it. It was budgeted in 2019. So we need to recreate that budget, reestablish that budget for 2020.
Okay. I guess another option could be to refer back to the Finance Committee who suggested this to us, but I will entertain the wishes of the board. Alder Rasmussen, you had your hand up.
Thank you. So for clarification then, if we want to proceed within the previously approved budget, we would need then to move to vote only on the carryover, but not the extra funding. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So is that where Becky and Mr. Killian were going with their motion, was to allow the carryover, but not the additional?
That's where I was going for, yes. I can't speak for Mr. Killian, but that was the intent, not
Well,
to
that
add
then
any more
also
budget
then-
mod.
Well, my question is that then should not restrict a future ask for the rest of the money if it would become necessary at a later date? We wouldn't be precluded from reconsidering the additional cost later, is my question.
We have our city attorney here.
I think the answer to that is correct, Lisa. So if, don't want to put words in Becky's mouth, but if she wanted to move to amend the resolution to say that you are moving to approve the carryover of the 115.5 to the 2020 budget, then you can vote yes if you want to approve the carryover to recreate it as she just described, or no if you don't. But you're not, you'd be removing then the supplementing the budget by 500 from the original resolution. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect
Okay.
sense to me. That was kind of the whole idea of it to start out with. We just have gone circles, but.
Right.
So is that the motion you'd like
Yes,
to?
the motion would be to approve the carryover from the 2019 budget to the 2020 budget of, what is it, I can't even see it, whatever it is.
Yep, but eliminate,
115,
yep,
yeah.
eliminate the
And-
54,500.
Yes, eliminating any budget amendment at this time.
I believe I had a second from Alder Watson. Discussion, Alder Watson. Oh, nope, just a second. Any discussion on this motion? Are we prepared to vote? I think we are. Good work.
Alder McElhaney, will you please look at this to make sure that it reads how you intend?
To approve the carryover from, to the 2020 budget.
All right.
Yes? Okay. Ryan?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Herbst?
Yes.
Watson?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
McElhaney?
Aye.
Wodinski?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Killian?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Peckham?
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
All right, moving on.
The amendment.
So we have approved the amendment. Are we prepared to vote on this in total?
Yeah.
Is there any discussion? I'm not seeing any, so I guess we are ready to vote.
So we're voting on the original as amended?
Correct.
Okay. There it is.
No, we can't do that, because that says approving a 2020 modification, which we're not doing.
We're updating our,
As an,
our copy
But
here.
carryover
Yeah,
rather
that's
than
amended.
modification.
Okay, so is this correct? It is correct, okay. Peckham?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Killian?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Wodinski?
Aye.
McElhaney?
Aye.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Watson?
Aye.
Herbst? Larson?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
All right, thank you. Moving on, we do have a couple of items here that we need to suspend the rules in order to vote on. So I guess that's the first order of business, a motion to suspend the rules.
I'll move to suspend.
We have a motion by Rasmussen, a second by Herbst. Is there any discussion? All right, you're ready to vote? This requires a 2/3 vote.
Ryan?
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
Herbst?
Aye.
Watson? Rasmussen?
Aye.
Peckham?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Killian?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Wodinski?
Aye.
McElhaney?
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
All right, this is file number 031006, and it comes from the Airport Committee and the Finance Committee. It's a joint resolution authorizing the execution of airport ground lease for Historic Holdings LLC and cancellation of the hangar construction approved on February 11th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
I'd move to approve.
I have a motion by Peckham. Do I have a second?
I will second it.
I have a second by Herbst. Any discussion? Yes, Alder Larson.
Yes, right here on page 1, in item 1, reads, "Within 60 days after completion of the building, tenant shall complete preparation, excavation, and installation of base course and preparation for asphalt pavement extending from the building to the taxiway and 200 feet wide. Tenant shall pay for 100% of the preparation base and course, and the city shall pay for the asphalt and the cost of laying the asphalt down. All preparations for the road shall be done pursuant to the city specifications and approved by city prior to city paving in this area." I see multiple problems with this paragraph. I mean, first of all, it says 200 feet wide, and it doesn't say how long. So, and second of all, with this approach, where it doesn't say how long. And second of all, because it doesn't say how long, it doesn't have any estimation of costs. Okay, and furthermore, the thing that really gets me the best here is what are the citizens doing paving the driveway from a runway to a corporate hangar? Don't get me wrong, I'm in full agree, I would love to have hangars there, but if Mr. Kusurk or anybody wants to build a hangar and a driveway to their building, they should pay for it themselves and not the city. I personally know of at least of 6 streets in my district alone that have waited 10 years or better for this pavement that's proposed here for this runway. And therefore, I would be willing to amend this section here, but I cannot vote on this. I cannot vote stating that there's no cost estimates, there's no size estimates, and there again, what are the citizens doing building a corporate driveway?
Thank you. Alder Killian. You might be muted. You're gonna have to, all right, we got you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think Alderperson Larson raised a good question just on terms of the potential cost. I don't know if those costs and related to the asphalt and the associated work have been put together, but I've also got another question, and it would be for the ground lease. If I'm not mistaken, it's 12 cents per square foot. And I took a look at a document from the Wisconsin DOT titled 2018 Wisconsin Airports Rates and Charges Survey. And my question relates to page 21 of that document. There is a map that depicts private hangar ground lease rates in Wisconsin, and it shows the calculated lease rate per square foot. Now, the difference between Wausau's rates and Stevens Point's is substantial, and it looks like Stevens Point is charging between 21 and 30 cents per square foot. And I'm wondering if that pricing and the disparity could be addressed, because looking at the 12 cents per square foot with the 13,820 square feet that's listed, it's roughly $1,650 some per year. Now, looking at Stevens Point's rates, on the lower end, that would be around $2,900 per year, which, you know, over the 20-year lease, we're talking about $25,000 in difference. And I would be curious to learn why there is such a pricing disparity between those two locations. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. First, our lease rates for the airport, for land lease and tenant lease space, whether they're for T hangars or for other airport services, those items are set by the council and the finance committee, I believe, on an annual basis. And I think Mary Ann should come up and talk about the finances of the municipal airport a little bit. Private contractors, private hangar construction yields property tax revenue for that airport. The airport operates as an enterprise fund for us, which means it operates like a business. All of the hangar tenants receive the same tenant lease, and hangar owners receive the same land lease. The terms of those can't be different. You have to treat them all the same. So I guess if Mary Ann could come up and talk about the financials a little bit. We always, with new hangar construction, require the hangar owner to prepare the apron, and that paving between the hangar and the taxiway and between hangars actually also is all facilitated the same way, so that we can make sure it's all done the same way. And, I guess, Mary Ann, if you want to talk to that a little bit, this is no different than it's been through the entire east and west hangar development area leases.
Are you ready? Are you prepared to speak on this topic?
I don't really have a lot to add. The airport committee reviews the lease rates on an annual basis and makes recommendations to the finance committee and then on to the common council of what that fee structure should be. I know that they do a survey periodically, not every year, of what other communities are charging. It's hard to compare apples to apples sometimes because you have different levels of service that are offered, things like that. So, the rates that are offered in this resolution are the current rates that all of the private hangars are paying at the airport. We have been paving, collaborating with the paving on these private developers. We do receive real estate taxes on those facilities, and the paving cost comes out of the airport's capital budget.
Okay, I see Alder Peckham.
Yes, thank you. As the, I guess maybe I have a hand down. Darn gadgets. Anyway, as a chair of the airport committee, what I've learned is that our ground raised leaks, our hangar rates and stuff like that are quite competitive. In fact, in some of the T hangars were higher than other areas because there's so much demand for them. I think if we want to examine the arrangements and the expectations of people who build hangars, if we want to evaluate that or look at it, I think that we could ask the airport committee. I see Mr. Larson is on there. I would welcome a kind of a review and examination of that, but I don't think we do that tonight when we're being asked to approve an agreement that's been voted on a couple times already and is being described by the airport manager as urgent, so this airport user can get going on his building. So I say let's approve it, and if somebody would like the airport committee to review these things, we can certainly do that.
Is there any further discussion? Alder Larson.
I would like to make a motion then that we accept this with the amendment that the city do not pay for the runway paving, and that the tenant shall, or whoever, because I don't feel it's the citizen's responsibility to pay for a driveway for an airport.
Okay, I have a motion to amend this agreement. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Killian. Any discussion on this amendment? Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. First, and what I had just said before is, in the same fiscal year, you cannot treat one hangar developer different than another hangar developer. They are all subject to the same terms of a standard lease. So if we are looking to get sued for disparate treatment, all we need to start doing is amending these things midterm. So if the airport committee wants to look at that in the future and find a way to adjust the fees or adjust the terms, that's certainly their option. But you can't treat one and another different in the same year. They're subject to the same terms. Now, that said, the Wausau taxpayer technically is not subsidizing the paving of that asphalt between the apron and the taxiway, because like Mary Ann said, the airport operates as an enterprise fund, like its own business, and the airport's primary fund source is both from FAA entitlement funds and the taxable revenue generated by the other hangar owners. So it's generating its own revenue source. Now, it does receive some sustenance from the general fund for basic maintenance and things, but when the airport budget pays for paving so that the municipal rate can be used for the sourcing of the asphalt, that is not taking money away from the street budget for a specific neighborhood. They're really two different things. Even though they all involve asphalt, the pots of money that stuff comes out of are very different. So I think we need to approve this one as is. If we don't like the terms, then vote no. But I don't think we're in a position to start changing up the terms of the lease right now, because that is inviting those hangar owners to fight amongst themselves and then hold us accountable for that treatment.
Alder Peckham.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with what's been said as far as, not trying to alter this agreement on the fly or tonight. And I will, as soon as this meeting concludes, send an email to the airport manager, Mr. Schmiel, and ask him that as soon as we have a non-emergency situation, airport committee, that he should offer a review of how that stuff is calculated and, how we're doing it. And all of the airport committee members will have a chance to ask questions and make comments at that time.
Sure. I want to acknowledge Alder Killian, and then I will come to you, Alder Ryan. Mr. Killian.
Thank you. I would just like to address Alderperson Rasmussen's concern, which sounds like a very serious one, that amendments to this could potentially result in litigation. And if that is the case, I mean, that's quite a serious possibility. Then I would like to see a written legal opinion from counsel for the municipal corporation on what we can and cannot amend safely in this contract. But I think, it was similar to the past item. I mean, if there were going to be concerns about fiscal consequences, I would like to see them enumerated. If there are going to be concerns about litigation, I would like a legal opinion that backs that up. So I think that's a concern, that touching this and amending it is going to result in legal problems. I think that would be appropriate involvement for the city attorney, and we would not want to make any hasty decisions this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Grote?
Just a couple of things. One is, if you read the agreement, there is an inflation that is enacted annually on the square foot lease. So, once I guess past practice, and that doesn't have to continue, but past practice is a new tenant starts at the 12 cents per square foot, and then a consumer price index is applied to that annually. So if you looked at a lease of a hangar that was built 5 years ago, their rate is different than the rate of a brand-new building. So it's going to become more expensive, that lease, as time progresses. And the term of the lease, let's see, so the lease shall be, and that is in item 2, the lease shall be adjusted annually to reflect the consumer price index from September 30th of the prior year, and it takes place on January 5th. So the 12 cents will get adjusted January of 2021. So it will start inflating at that time.
Okay.
Just wanted to
I also
point
want
that
to acknowledge the request from Alder Killian to council. Is that something you'd be able to provide us? Is what kinds of terms we can amend?
Absolutely, I can do that.
Okay, thank you. Alder Ryan.
It happened that I was on the phone prior to the meeting talking with Doug Denny, who's on the airport committee. I guess I had kind of questioned about how the rate could be so low. I mean, I've never heard of any rate being at under $1 a square foot. But I know nothing about the airport area. And I believe Doug Denny did not attend the last airport committee meeting, but he did contact the airport manager and said that 12 cents a square foot is statewide average. So I guess I feel comfortable with that, per se. But I did mention to Doug that as part of going over the lease, that it said under page 4, under obligations of city, 19, paragraph A, city shall plow snow promptly and as necessary for the operation of the airport on the runways, hangars, tie-down areas, and any areas in the parking lot necessary for use by tenant. And that under B, city shall maintain the service of the runways, hangar areas, tie-down, and necessary areas of the parking lot in a condition which is reasonable, taking into consideration the required use. From what Doug Denny told me, and maybe Patrick can confirm or deny, I guess I'm under the impression the runways are being plowed by the Wausau flying service. And then I guess I do agree with Lou, when they're talking about in the actual ground lease, 200 feet wide by whatever length, we don't know what that length is, we don't know what that cost is. So at this point, the contract is incomplete, there's a number of issues, and I would like to amend it to table it to address these issues.
So, point of order, we right now have a motion on the table to, I want to make sure I have it correct here. It was the amendment to this, and that was to, what was it? Oh, we're pulling it up. So I want to make sure we can continue discussing on this, or voting on this before we get to your amendment. Sure. There's a question of whether or not folks on WebEx can hear us. Maybe just give me a thumbs up if you can. Okay, it looks like you can hear us. Are we missing some folks? Okay, our police chief. I guess while we wait to get that figured out, you can see the, you can see the motion to amend that's on here. The motion to amend is the airport ground lease at section 1, paragraph 2, to remove the language that the city shall pay for the asphalt and cost of laying the asphalt down.
Is that correct, Mr. Larson?
That is correct, yes.
I want to make sure we can have enough discussion on this. If there's more, I see Alder Peckham's hand is raised.
Did you get a second?
Oh,
We had a
we
second.
already had it.
We had a second by Mr. Killian.
Alder Peckham, can you hear me? Maybe not. All right, we have a little technology delay here for a second. He's good. The WebEx folks are good.
Might I add something here?
We just have to have a delay. They can't hear us, so we want them to hear the discussion.
Marianne, can you call Jean or Jerry? I know you have one of their phone numbers, because they left.
I think that might be part of the problem.
Oh.
Yeah, every time, now.
There.
All right. Alders on WebEx, can you hear me? Just kidding.
Oh, no, I see.
Oh, okay.
It's still not working?
No, no,
It's
yeah.
not working. Well, so,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
So if we want to continue the meeting before I take it to, then I believe everyone will have to call in using their cell phones, and hopefully that would work, but I have no frame of reference to know. I can chat with them.
Oh, sure.
So if that's
I-
what you want me to do.
Okay, if we can see if they're willing to join us via call-in. Otherwise, we can have a technology recess.
Do you want to pull up the event and tell me what the phone number is?
All right, for anyone listening at home, and I don't think anyone on WebEx or the phone can hear us, but what we're going to do here is we're going to restart the WebEx, and hopefully that remedies our audio issues. So stick with us. We will be right back. All right. The good news is I can hear things over the phone. Maybe Michael Martins, you could give me a thumbs up if you hear me.
I can hear you loud and clear.
All right. Welcome back. We'll just give everyone a couple of minutes to call back in, or maybe just 1 minute.
I can hear people now.
Yes, welcome back. We can see and hear you. We're just waiting a minute or two so everyone else joins us. All right. We are in this together. We're doing it. All right, we're waiting for Alder Killian. Oh, I'll take it. Good evening
I think I'm
again.
back. Can you hear me now in the chamber?
We can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yay, yes.
Awesome. Welcome back. We're still waiting for a couple of people to pop back on. Oh, he's almost there.
I did text John Schmiel. He is coming, so perhaps he would be able to provide you with more in-depth information. So he's on his way. So.
Do we need to do
Okay,
anything?
so we have Neil, Killian, Peckham, Martins, Rasmussen. Is there anybody else?
Do you have any?
Neil, Killian, Peckham, Martins,
That's it.
Rasmussen.
Okay.
And Peckham has his hand.
All right. So just to remind everybody where we're at in this discussion, we're discussing the motion to amend the ground lease contract so that we, what is it? Oh, here we go. The motion to amend the airport ground lease at section 1, paragraph 2, to remove the language that the city shall pay for the asphalt and the cost of laying the asphalt down. I want to recognize Alder Peckham.
Okay, thank you. I think it would be very bad form for us to alter this lease agreement at this point. If we don't like the lease agreement, we can examine it, we can have the airport committee look at it. It really, I believe that is incumbent on council members, if they see something in a packet that bothers them or if they don't understand it. John Schmiel was probably at the airport all day and could have received any calls from any curious parties. And I think we need to keep in mind also that the hangar, the square foot fee is augmented by the property tax these folks pay on these structures. So I think we're doing okay with the current agreement, but I'm certainly willing, as I offered earlier, to put it on the agenda so we can review it and everybody can feel more comfortable with the lease agreement that we're using.
I'm going to recognize Alder Rasmussen, and then I'll come to you, Alder Larson.
Thank you. If the airport manager is en route, while we wait for his arrival, could we hold action on this item? And then perhaps move to the sanitary sewer easement, that's the next item, and then come back to this one?
I'm looking at my attorney. Is that, okay, it is, we can hold action on this. I want to make sure, do you want to hold your comment until the time that we return to it?
Not. I would like to make my comment now while it's fresh in my
go
brain.
ahead.
I believe it was Alder Rasmussen or Peckman that said that the citizens aren't actually paying for this asphalt here, that the FAA and there's other subsidies that are paying for this thing. So if that's all said and good, then I think it's a good measure to make sure that the city is taken out of this paragraph.
Thank you. Alder Rasmussen, I see your hand is up still. Do you have another comment?
Just a quick one. I would say that, just because the city does not fund a project out of the levy does not mean that the city's not involved. So the city still administers the airport budget and the airport enterprise fund. And so the word city has to appear as a party to the contract. They're leasing the land from the city. We are still a partner at that table. And even though we're not paying for it with tax levy dollars, that administration of the airport fund is still a city function. So we do still need to remain there.
Alder Larson.
I do agree to a point that the city does need to be involved in this lease and stuff. Only thing I'm asking for is the city be removed from this paragraph.
Okay, I want to acknowledge that we have the airport manager in attendance right now. If we feel comfortable to ask some questions, that'd be great. Mr. Schmiel. Okay.
I apologize for not being here earlier. I didn't even know that I could attend with the social distancing thing, so it wasn't my intention to leave you hanging.
All right, thank you. I guess right now we're discussing the ground lease that for Kasurik, and there's a motion on the table to amend it to remove, I keep needing to look at it, to remove section 1, paragraph 2. It's language that the city shall pay for the asphalt and the cost of laying the asphalt down. And we've had some discussion back and forth about whether or not the city funds are used for this. And so if you have enough context, we have some council members with some questions.
Okay, so we enacted this lease in 1998, which is when we first started doing this private hangar development program. The purpose of the program was to generate revenue for the city, and that's how the lease was designed. One source of revenue generation was through the lease of the land. The other source of revenue generation was through taxation of the value of the building. So where most of our income comes from is from the value of the building and not the lease of the land. The way that we came up with the lease rate was we wanted to take the average of the state, average lease rate in the state at the time that the lease was executed. So that's how that number was created. With regard to the pavement, we analyzed all the ways that other airports did this, offered this to airport tenants. And we felt that this was the fairest way to do it because some airports required that the whole investment of the pavement were 100% on the builder, and then other places the city paid or the owner of the airport paid for all of that. So what we did was we compromised and said that the builder has to build the building and they have to prepare that space from the face of their hangar to the existing taxi lane, and then the city would pave that. Because we wanted to make sure that that pavement got done to FAA and DOT spec, and we were going to have to maintain that pavement in the future as well. It would not be the owner, it would not be the hangar owner's pavement, it's the city's pavement. So we thought that that was a fair compromise.
Do I have any questions?
And also, all of the pavements at the airport so far, that's how it's gone. And we have 1, 2, 3, we currently have 14 hangars on the airport, and we have another one already approved, and we have 3 more for next year if this keeps going, if you approve this, because Mr. Kasarik wants to build 2 hangars, 1 this year, 1 next year. And then the Learn, Build, Fly hangar people want to build another one next to theirs next year.
Thank you. Alder Larson, do you have a question?
I have to echo on what Alder Ryan said. I deem this contract incomplete because it says you need a 200 feet wide, but 200 feet wide to where? Is it a block? Is it a mile? Is it a quarter mile? And there is no estimated cost in there. And echoing on what Alder Rasmussen said, that she said indirectly the citizens don't pay for this, that the FAA and other entities pay for that. And if that is the case, I just would want the city to be removed from this paragraph because I don't think it's our obligation to provide a driveway to a private building.
Okay, so the reason it doesn't specify that is because at the time that that lease is executed, we don't know how far out the apron for the building that they've built comes. So some of these people like a very gradual slope up to their hangar, so it's easy for the airplanes to move in and out. And those people will build their apron pretty far out from their hangar. So the distance from their apron to the existing taxi lane varies depending on how they decide to do their apron. The width is specified in there because what we require the builders to do is to put in a pavement from the face of their hangar all the way to the existing taxiway, but we also require them to build it 10 feet each side of their hangar as well, because the whole goal is that when we fill up the East Hangar development area with hangars, we will have continuous pavement from the north to the south. And that was, it's not just a driveway. The reason we have to design it like that, and the reason that we want the city to put this pavement is we need to have continuous pavement so that we can have snow removal, because we typically remove snow from north all the way to south. And if you have gaps in the pavement at all, it's impossible to remove the snow. And the city of Wausau is responsible for moving the snow. It would be so incredibly labor intensive to remove the snow if we did not have continuous pavement from north to south. Obviously, if we require a builder to put in an apron, they only want to pave a path wide enough to get their airplane in and out, and that just makes for an impossible snow removal situation. So that's really the reason, another reason why this is written the way that it is. Now, the reason we can't put in a price for what the pavement's going to cost is because once the lease is executed, then we can go out and we can get a quote from the paver at that time. We were hoping to get this executed earlier this year, which would have made it unable for us to get a pavement quote. I have since gotten a pavement quote, and on short notice, I don't have it in front of me right now. But obviously, the cost of asphalt varies from year to year and on the season. So it's pretty difficult to put a figure like that into the contract.
Thank you. Alder Peckham.
Our finance director has also asked to speak.
Okay.
Okay.
Peckham, you can go first, and then we'll have finance
Very
director.
good. Thank you. I just wanted to kind of bring John up to speed a little bit, Mr. Schmiel, about kind of where the discussion has been. And my argument at this point has been that this is not the time when we would begin, making modifications to the ground lease agreement. That, this is here before us, and we should not be trying to modify it tonight. And that if we wish, the next full meeting of the airport committee can feature a review of the ground lease agreement and the whys and the wherefores and how all that works, so that we can decide at that point whether we want to consider modifying it for future years, or if, since it's been working, if we want to keep going. So kind of where we're at, John.
Could I just say a couple things? The lease was approved by the airport committee and the finance committee. The finance committee had seen these leases previous and did not have, they did not ask to modify it. I'm not saying that the council doesn't have the right. I just want to bring that to your attention, that this isn't a unique, we've probably been doing a hangar or two almost every year since we've started doing this. So it's not like this has just popped up someplace and we're trying to figure out how we're going to do it. The other thing is this: timing in this situation is of the essence. To give you an idea, Mr. Kasarik is actually doing the city a big favor here by building the hangar. Prior to COVID, our business was incredibly busy with pilot service work. My business, for those of you who aren't familiar, my company is Wausau Flying Service, and I provide two things for the city. I'm the airport manager for the city of Wausau, but my company also has a contract with the city to provide the services at the airport, okay? And one of the services we provide is pilot services. So that means that if an airplane owner has a need for a pilot, my company provides the pilot for that airplane. And that airplane is typically based at the Wausau Airport, and those airplanes consume a lot of fuel traveling to airports all across the United States, helping Wausau businesses to do business across the country. That business has been very successful in the last 8 years, and in this year, one of the airplane owners has ordered a very expensive jet, which will be delivered to Wausau, I believe in September or October. The city of Wausau and the airport right now today does not have the space for that airplane. So I went to Mr. Kasarik, who is one of our good tenants, and I said, would you consider building a hangar on the airport so that we could house this new jet that's coming in the fall? And so Mr. Kasarik agreed to make this investment, and he'll be moving the airplanes that we currently store for him into these hangars that he wants to build. That will allow us to put this other jet into our hangar and make more revenue from our hangar, as well as more revenue from the fuel flow from this jet that's going to fly out of our airport. If the city of Wausau had to make the investment in a hangar to be able to do this, the city of Wausau would be looking at $1 million investment right now. And that is just not something that we have the time or the ability to negotiate and discuss right now. If Mr. Kasarik doesn't build this hangar, this really puts the airport in a spot, because he's doing us a favor. And when this aircraft comes in September, I don't know where we're going to put it. So I just want to tell you that this lease being passed is time critical for the airport and for the city as well. If he doesn't do this, I don't know what the answer is.
I want to acknowledge the finance director who would like to speak.
It's a great segue that John just brought that up, because, just for some background information, there's really two facility models at the airport today. One is the city built the hangars, and we've been leasing those out either individually, or we have large hangars that airplanes are just leasing a space within the large hangar. And of course, in that situation, the city bonded for the proceeds to be able to build the hangars, so we had to manage the interest costs as well as the initial investment on the asset, as well as the ongoing maintenance of those facilities. And then we collected rent from those hangar operators, versus this new model, as John pointed out, where we just entered into, which is we lease them land on a long-term basis and they build their own facility. And it's their responsibility to maintain and upgrade that facility. We had a door go out on what we would call our corporate hangar, and it was, close to $300,000. That's my recollection. And so you can see that having the airplane person own that building and maintain that building from a taxpayer's standpoint actually is the least expensive model, because they're not having to make that investment. And, anyone who has spent time looking at the budget of the airport, facility maintenance is probably the biggest cost and the most difficult to manage, because all of those hangars that we built years ago are encountering a lot of maintenance costs, and so the city is having to reinvest in those. So, while it looks like the cost of the pavement is investment that the city is making in the long term, it's a small investment compared to the old model that we used, where we were building the building and then maintaining that asset with the small amount of rent that we get on those hangars. So I just wanted to point that one.
Thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Just for clarification, because John Schneel wasn't with us when we started this discussion. It was not my statement that the FAA pays for the pavement for the hangar owners. My statement was that the enterprise fund that the airport operates under is where those budget expenses would come out of. And so for clarity, I did state that the airport has a number of fund sources that make up that enterprise fund. One of them is the property tax that's derived from the private hangars. Another is FAA entitlements that are used for certain types of projects only, like runways and snow removal equipment buildings and things like that. And the other is if maintenance becomes necessary and the enterprise fund doesn't have enough money, we have before subsidized that fund from the general fund. But the FAA is certainly not paying pavement expenses for private hangar owners. However, we are also not intending to pay for those with levy dollars. And levy dollars are neighborhood residents' tax dollars. That's where I wanted to be clear. But the only other thing I'd like John to talk about, since we have him with us, is what happens when we start to create disparity between hangar owners by modifying the leases on the fly on the council floor. They're all subject to the same lease for a reason. They may pay different rates based on when they began, but the terms and what we provide and what they're expected to provide is always the same. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So could you talk a little bit about what happens if we start to pick and choose on these agreements?
Well, I don't know what happens, and especially with the new COVID economy, I don't know how easy it's going to be to encourage private developers to do this kind of development at the airport. I hope that our economy comes back, but this is an opportunity that if we don't take it now, we may look back and really regret, because the deal that we're giving Keith is not a better deal than any other customer that we've had make a private investment on public property at the airport. It's the same deal that all of the hangar builders before him have gotten, and it was based on an average which we thought was fair. And so to adjust those things now would really put things into question, especially with the economy. I already had one person who we approved as hangar who signed an agreement with a builder. He just talked to me this week that he may have to cancel his construction for this summer. The whole reason why the city and the FAA invested in the East Hangar development area was to encourage this kind of development at the city. This is the cheapest development for the most activity that we can get at the airport. Otherwise, taxpayers have to make this investment. And even as airport manager, and as much as I love aviation, I'm also a taxpayer. And I can tell you that to ask the taxpayers to pay for a hangar that's only going to benefit a few people is a big question to ask. I would much rather have those builders invest in the kind of property that they want and can use exactly the way they want it. And when they do it, they make a 20-year commitment to the airport. So they want what's best for the airport too. This is a way to keep the airport open for a really long period of time. So I would encourage you to consider what I've said tonight, and because I would be really disappointed if this would not go through. There would be a lot of things falling through here if this doesn't pass.
Alder Peckham.
I intended to have my hand down, but I would just say that I think we've thoroughly examined this question, and we should vote on it, pass it quickly. So,
Are you calling the question?
yes, I guess you could say that.
All right, I think we need,
Call the question.
I think we need
I've
to,
had my hand up for quite some time.
Sorry.
oh,
Technical.
apparently it hasn't worked. Do we need
Yes.
to, do we need to vote
For
on?
roughly 15 minutes.
Oh, boy, okay. Do we need to vote on calling the question? Okay, so first we're going to vote on calling the question. I just want to let you all know that there are 2 alders that wish to speak on this topic, so you can consider that with your vote. Right now, we're voting on calling the question and stopping debate.
As mayor,
Yes.
if there are 2 alders who have had their hand up, I would withdraw my call for the question and be happy to hear them.
Yeah, all right. We will accept that withdrawal, and I'm going to acknowledge Alder Killian and then Alder Ryan.
Thank you, and thank you to Alderperson Peckham for allowing us to get our thoughts and questions in here. Well, I'd like to thank Mr. Sneal for coming and providing some information here. You did address my question about the rates and the state average. That makes sense to me, and it kind of, Ms. Ryan had mentioned this as well, I believe, but that addresses that aspect for me. What I'm concerned about is that on this resolution sheet, after the colon, where it says fiscal impact, all that is mentioned is really revenue. There is nothing on this resolution document which mentions any fiscal impact of cost or expense. And I think as several people have now mentioned, from Ms. Groh to Alderperson Rasmussen, there is cost. And one reason I was sent here was to make sure that the council was not writing blank checks and doing that blindly. If this is time sensitive, then I don't think it's too much to ask to get a quote on that asphalt. And I would have hoped that would have been done before if we're going to be put into a time-sensitive scenario. So I would say that this resolution, where it doesn't even mention a fiscal impact of cost or expense, that's inaccurate. I believe the council's entitled to an estimate of the asphalt, and I think that's not a lot to ask. So I would hope there's a way to do that. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Schmidt.
I may have an estimate on my phone. I'm going to check my email here real quick, because I did get an estimate. And actually, by the way, it's an overestimate, because I had gotten an estimate from the existing taxi lane to where the hangar face starts on, oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. The estimate that I got was for a different hangar, so I guess I can tell you what that's going to cost this year, but I can't tell you what it will cost when we have to install it for Mr. Kasarik, because the hangar that I got a quote for was the exact same dimension. So if you can give me a moment, I'll look up that and try and get you a number.
Okay, I'll acknowledge Alder Ryan. She had her hand up.
John, I was talking to Doug Denny by phone, and then he called you and got back to me. And I guess I just wanted to confirm some things that were in another section of the lease on page 4, obligations to the city, saying the city shall plow snow promptly and necessary for the operation of the airport and areas of the parking lot necessary for use by the tenant. And then under paragraph B, city shall maintain the surface of the runways, hangar areas, tie-down areas, and necessary areas of the parking lot. And I guess, and what Doug told me, and so again, this is like secondhand, he had said the runway is snowplowed by the Wausau Flying Services and not from the city. So is there a subcontractor doing, or, I mean, is this just kind of legal issues of who's doing what?
Okay, so I believe that the reason the snow plowing and maintenance of those facilities is in the lease is because the builder wants a guarantee that since he's building a hangar there, that he will have an airport to operate off of. And he's just, what the lease is stating is that maintenance of the airport facility is the responsibility of the city. Now, with regards to how we maintain the surfaces, the city of Wausau provides the equipment to remove the snow at the airport. And then my company, Wausau Flying Service, because we are in the aviation industry and have the snow plowing experience at airport, we're the ones that plow the runways, the taxiways, and the aprons. The city of Wausau, on the other hand, is responsible for plowing the parking lot, because that's outside of the fence, and my company is not insured to plow outside of the fence. And then the city of Wausau also plows the area which we call the taxi lanes, which is the pavement between the hangars. Because in the event of that snow removal, the equipment needs to get fairly close to the buildings, and that was not a liability that my company was willing to take on. So that's the way that we have maintained the airport for years without, since I can remember, and I've been here 28 years now.
Well, thank you, John. It just happens with new members to the council, and back as an undergrad, I took 2 courses in business law, and so I tend to like to get into the nitty-gritty, and it just seemed that we don't have a length of how, and what the cost is. So I do feel like it's valid issues that we're talking about, and it's not necessarily any change per se, but we're looking more intensely in it. And I guess my question is for you, John, and Ann, then is there supposed to be better terminology that a city subcontractor is plowing the actual, the runway?
Well, I think as John states, the city's responsible for seeing that it gets done. How we do that, whether we contract with the fixed-based operator or we send out our own DPW crew, who obviously, as he said, would have different insurance and skill issues, perhaps, I don't know, is okay. I mean, that's how we handle it, is through the fixed-based operator.
I understand, but it seems like, well, then we're, how much of this is the cost of the city through city staff versus subcontractors? And I understand it's probably something that needs to be looked at more in depth by the committee. But I guess my question is there a way we could?
Well, the city owns the airport, so that we do want them to be a party to the contract, obviously.
Okay. Is there a way we could proceed with the actual contract less about the pavement? Because at this point, we don't know when it's going to be done. We don't know what the cost, and we can do that as an addendum at a later date.
Okay, can I make a statement? Okay, so the city right now, under our current agreements through Wausau Flying Service, already do what this contract says. The only thing that the city will be doing is plowing this additional square footage of asphalt that we're installing. So it's not like we're making a special effort to plow snow. This hangar's being built in a hangar area that already exists and being put on a blank spot. And we're just putting some pavement in front of it. And we already plow snow in that area over there already. We're just saying that we agree to continue to do that. I believe that's what this contract says.
I understand, John, but the previous year, we had an enormous amount of snow. And so from year to year, the snow plowing could be double the amount. And it doesn't appear that there's anything within the city's rates of putting in that contingency of getting back for the additional labor and equipment costs if you have an unusual year.
Okay, well, the city always budgets for snow removal at the airport, and let me just say one thing, that the FAA provides for a lot of the income, or a lot of the expenses for capital projects at the airport. Most of the capital projects at the airport are funded as low as 50-50 with the city, but most projects are 95-5 with the city, okay? And in order to receive that FAA funding, we have to agree to meet the FAA's requirements if they're going to give us that money. And one of those requirements is that we agree to plow the snow and keep the runways open at the airport. If for some reason we would not be able to fulfill that obligation, then we would not be able to receive future FAA funding for projects at the airport. So we're already providing that service now. We're just saying that we will provide that service for the square footage that we're putting in front of the hangar. I don't know that it will increase the amount of labor at the airport currently taking place by much more than an additional 10 minutes, a snow removal session. Also, this is really wonderful because I do see a lot of new faces here, and I do understand that you haven't had experience with the airport. In fact, I'm meeting with the mayor tomorrow because I want to give her a tour. I don't know if that works for your schedules, and if it doesn't, I will make sure that I make time in my schedule. I would like to provide a tour for every new face that's here so that we could explain at least how the airport is currently operated and how things work so that you, when are facing questions in the future, you might have a better idea. Okay, so the quote that I received for the pavement in front of an 80 by 80 hangar that's already at the airport, and we have to put it in this spring, is $9,155 for that pavement. Okay, so, and actually this pavement will cost less than that because I overestimated it by 1,600 feet. So this is actually an overestimation. So for each 80 by 80 hangar, if they were built this year, if it was from the existing taxi lane to the face of the hangar with no apron, it would be $9,155 for each hangar, or $18,310.
All right, I want to acknowledge Alder Larson.
I have a motion on the floor we need to vote on.
We still have discussion happening.
Okay.
Unless you have a different reason. I have Alder Peckham and Alder Watson both with their hands up. Alder Peckham.
Thank you. I just lowered my hand because I felt that Alderman Larson was ready to call for a vote. So I am in favor of voting on this. And as I said, I will pledge to have John review with the airport committee a lot of these details. We're getting into a lot of things, snow removal and all that really aren't germane to whether we go with this. So I would just ask that let's, get the show on the road and have a vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Watson.
I guess I'm all for calling the question on the vote, but I guess my question is why, do we really need to get caught up in the lease? It's just a form lease, right? The issue is, should we approve this funding? So the lease and the editing that should be something that the committee takes up and goes on from, new tenants that we offer this lease to, right?
Okay. So right now, the motion on the floor is an amendment to the airport ground lease at section 1. And I just lost my screen. I was staring at it. It's okay. So if you just bear with me. Okay. It is a motion to amend section 1, paragraph 2, to remove the language that the city shall pay for the asphalt and the cost of laying the asphalt down. Now, if you vote in favor of this, you are adding this language to the lease.
Removing those words.
Sorry, removing this.
Removing.
All right, we are ready to vote. Let's do this thing.
Peckham.
No.
Martins.
No.
Killian. Mr. Killian?
Pardon me, audio issue. Yes.
Neal?
No.
Wadinsky?
No.
McElhaney?
No.
Rasmussen?
No.
Watson?
No.
Herbst?
No.
Larson?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Motion fails 3-8.
Are we prepared to vote on the ground lease as presented, or is there any discussion on this? All right, I don't see any discussion, so let's go ahead and vote on this ground lease. And while we wait, I can read, it's a joint resolution authorizing the execution of the airport ground lease for Kasirik Holdings LLC and cancellation of the hangar construction approved on February 11th, 2020.
Ryan?
No.
Larson?
No.
Herbst?
Yes.
Watson? Rasmussen?
Aye.
McElhaney?
Aye.
Wadinsky?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Killian?
No.
Martins?
Aye.
Peckham?
Aye.
Motion passes 8-3.
All right, thank you, everybody. We're moving along to file number 190912. That is a resolution approving the sanitary sewer easement at 400 East Thomas Street. And that motion, the action is pending from committee. What is the pleasure of this body?
Move to approve the easement as requested to allow the work to continue.
All right, we have a motion by Peckham. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Herbst. You didn't quite get in there. Is there any discussion on this? Any discussion? I guess we're ready to vote.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Watson? Herbst?
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Peckham?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Killian?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Wadinsky?
Aye.
McElhaney?
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
All right, the last item on our agenda is public comment and suggestion. I do have a request from Alder Ryan. She'll be leaving the day to make these comments.
Good evening. Deb Ryan, 702 Elm Street. I was not at the last meeting that was talked about for the Lockery project as well as for the plaza, and that Christian Schock had mentioned, was asked by Gary Gisselman about our Section 8 properties, and Chris had said that we have this year the highest number ever of Section 8 units. And from my time back in the early 2000s, working at Catholic Charities, I was a HUD housing certified counselor. And so I worked on what was available in the community for affordable housing. And back then, we did have the Randolph Courts that was going as Section 8 and decided at the end of the decade to go to market rate. I happened to volunteer in bringing some commodities to a couple of seniors that lived in that, and that they felt that they wanted to stay there because it was worthwhile and that they were planning on doing remodeling. But the units there are 100 units, and then the Cannonburg units had gone from, I believe, senior subsidized units to market rate. And that back, I believe over a decade ago, was 106 units. So in the past decade or more, we've had over 205 units that were subsidized housing. And it just happens in talking to Betty Noel and one of the other staff at the Housing Authority today. I talked to Karen at Diamond View, which is the formerly Randolph Courts, and that they are, as of May 1st, going to be Section 8 HUD Project Place Section 8, so that all of their units will become Section 8. And so we have in the past have had hundreds more of units, and it just happens they had gone market rate, and now at least Diamond View is looking at, and will become Section 8, which is 30% of your income. I did ask Karen if there's any plans to look at any other type of properties, and there seems that there is an interested in that corporation into looking at more affordable housing. So we do have a great need, especially with the pandemic. We have a number of families that just don't know what their income will be and are wondering how things will go. But I wanted to address this because Chris had said that we are at the highest, as of now, on Section 8 housing, and that's not correct. We were higher by a couple hundred units a decade ago. Thank you.
Thank you for their comments. Are there any comments from anybody else in the audience? I don't know how many times I should call this, if I need to call it 3 times, but nope.
Just, do you just want, I can just clarify, the statement if you wanted, just for clarification, especially, would that be helpful?
Since it's not on the agenda, I'm kind of concerned.
Yeah, since this is just as public comment, Chris, if you want to address that with Ms. Ryan after the meeting, that would be helpful. Or you can send an email to the whole council. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, if there is no other public comment, I would take a motion to adjourn. We have a motion by Herbst. Do I have a second? Oh, I guess we have a comment.
I just wanted to make sure that somewhere along the line, we thank John Schmiel for coming in and speaking to us. I mean, the man is working all day long and then gets called in tonight, and we didn't really get a chance to properly thank him, so I hope that gets conveyed to him.
I will convey that. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn? Yes. I have a motion by Herbst. Do I have a second? I have a second by Larson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
Looks like nobody's opposed. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.